everybody. It's been a while. I'm Nate Eaton in our studio in Idaho Falls. Want to be sure you can hear me and that you can see me. I'm getting the thumbs up from outside our studio window that Jordan can see us. So thank you for being here. A lot of news to cover. Thought I'd come on and talk about what happened yesterday at Chad Daybell's case and then what happened this morning with Lori Vallow Daybell. If you have questions about either case, post them in the comments. Peggy's going to be moderating this and polling questions and sending them to me. I'll try to answer as many as I can because several of you have sent me questions and I just haven't had the time to get to them all. So I think we're good across all platforms and I'm getting the thumbs up. Let me give you a little bit of background before we get going about Lori Vallow Daybell. I had heard last week that she was going to be moved by plane, and that there was a weather issue. And by the way, the sheriff confirmed this all today in Maricopa County. So I was, in fact, I had a story written up last Wednesday night, Tuesday night. Do you remember? If you follow my Facebook, I did a post about how the Idaho Department of Corrections said Lori Vallow is no longer an inmate, but then it said also that she was still being housed there. So I checked with the prison. They said, no, she's still here. It was a glitch. When in reality, she was supposed to be moved. She was supposed to be flown, as the sheriff said today. That didn't happen. Then it was Thanksgiving. And now we know that yesterday morning, early, I believe it was, I have the time that she left Pocatello, 9:44 a.m. They picked her up at IDOC in Pocatello. I doubt she had much warning. And per the extradition agreement with Arizona, the Idaho Department of Correction transferred custody of Lori Vallow Daybell to a transport team from Maricopa County, Arizona at 9:44 a.m. Wednesday. The transfer occurred at the Pocatello Women's Correctional Center, where she has been incarcerated since July 31st. They put her in the car and they moved her across down, I guess, from Pocatello, down through Utah, down to Arizona in Maricopa County, where she was booked around 1 a.m. She was arraigned, I believe, around 2 a.m. And they actually shared video that I want to show you. There's no sound on this video, but this is kind of a glimpse. Not that, but if you haven't watched our Secret Santas, you should. This is a glimpse at Lori. I don't know why my computer's doing this. Hold up. Sorry. Stand by. Lori being booked and processed at the Maricopa County Jail. Here we go. There's no sound, so you'll just have to take a look. I'm impressed that the sheriff's office shared this with the media. Very nice of them to do so. But you can see Lori is there. The sheriff said that they took 2 vehicles to transport her. And she is there in a blue jumpsuit. She has long sleeves. When she left the prison in Idaho, it's much colder here, probably in the teens for the temperature, than it is in Maricopa County. You can see the one deputy there has short sleeves. This is where they have to search her, make sure there's nothing on her, take off her shoes, check for any sort of contraband, any sort of weapons. As far as we know, there was none of that. There she is going through the x-ray, kind of like at the airport. The metal detectors, she flashed green, so she cleared that. And then it's off to be processed. Now, the sheriff made it clear that all inmates go through this process there in Maricopa County. Most facilities do this. They changed her into their uniform, which is the orange jumpsuit. She's got her reading glasses there. This was after like a 14, 15, 16-hour drive, by the way. And now they're going to take her photo, her mugshot. I mean, if you're just tuning in, we're kind of doing a recap about the latest on Lori Vallow Daybell, the latest on Chad Daybell. He was in court yesterday. Here's where they took her mugshot. And then you'll see it here shortly. It'll pop up. There's where they took the picture. And they took one from the side, and there it is. There's the mugshot. I believe this is the 9th or 10th mugshot that she's had. We put them all together, and you can see them if you're interested in that. So here's the interesting thing in Arizona, at least in this jurisdiction, from what I understand. They have court going all the time. This happens in a lot of bigger cities. So you're booked, you go right into the court, and you appear. And this is what happened with Lori. This is her very first court appearance in Arizona on these charges. I'm going to play it for you. It's about 3 minutes long. So you can see that she has some questions for the judge about the charges. He reads her the charges, and this is what happened there.
Wait.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, we don't have sound on this one, but I know there's sound there. So I'm going to bring this volume up. That might be because I'm muted. But this is, I'll walk you through the sound here if you can see Lori. not the dancers. Basically, Lori had some questions for the judge when she went before the judge for the first time. He read her the charges, 2 counts of conspiracy to commit murder. And he asked if she had any questions. She asked, okay, I think we have it now. If not, I'm going to ask Jordan if he can come in and take a look at this. Jordan, I'll get Jordan in here to help me out, because Jordan helps me out in all situations in life. Okay, Jordan, can you just check the sound on this so that we can play this? We threw this together like 15 minutes ago, by the way, so it might be an issue over here. I'm not sure. Lori appears in court, 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, I believe, before the judge. He reads her the charges. She asks if the 2 charges will be combined into one. Remember, she's facing a charge for conspiracy in Charles Vallow's death. And she's facing a charge in conspiracy for the shooting of Brandon Boudreaux and her niece's, Melanie Pawlowski's ex-husband. So she asks the judge, will these charges be combined? And he says they're separate charges, separate cases. She also asks if she'll have 1 or 2 attorneys. And so if you want me to play it, Jordan, I can, if that'll help.
Play.
Let's see if we can hear audio on this. This computer's being funky because it keeps
I noticed that it keeps opening.
restarting. Yeah. So, okay, there we go. So the judge said that, you'll be appointed most likely a public defender because that's what she'll need. She has no means, and they will take care of that situation. It was a short court hearing. It was like 3 minutes long. And then she went back to the jail. And then a few hours later, the sheriff held a news conference to talk about what's going to happen with her, the logistics of moving her from Idaho to Arizona. That's where he said they had planned to use a plane originally, but because of weather conditions, probably here in Idaho, they didn't want to risk anything. And that's why they decided to drive up here with 2 SUVs. Want me to try it again? Okay, so that's where it stands with Lori Vallow Daybell. So what happens from here? Well, Lori has another court appearance on December the 7th. Then, from today, I understand it's around, if she does not waive her right to a speedy trial, then they have to try her, I believe, in about 270 days, give or take a few days. Meaning there will be a trial for Lori Vallow Daybell within the next year. The other possibility is she just pleads guilty. She pleads guilty, and that's that. She gets sentenced probably to life in prison. I don't know, what, maybe another sort of sentence. She could walk in there on the 7th of December and say guilty, and then they set a sentencing hearing, and potentially within 3 months, it's done. And the sheriff in Arizona said they then sent her back here to Idaho to serve her life sentence here. So that would be fascinating if the Arizona thing goes short. Given the fact that Lori Vallow Daybell in the past has not really done stuff like that, it's a good chance she will be, this will have another trial within the next year. And that'd be wild if Chad's trial's in April and May, then Lori has a trial in Arizona in like June and July. Excuse me. So, let me see if we can get this audio for you one more time. You want me to try it, or do you think? Oh, now we're not even seeing a picture. Okay, if you want to watch the footage, we have it on our YouTube channel of Lori appearing before this judge. Head over there and you can. We'll play that for you if Jordan gets it up here, but if not, that'll be okay. We can come back to that. Now I want to talk. So there's the status on Lori. I know a lot of you have questions on her. One of the big questions we had was, what's that?
Oh, sorry.
What about the official who said that they were going to wait and keep Lori here until all of the Idaho stuff was done? Well, that changed, obviously, or it was someone that may have spoken to a reporter who didn't quite know the plan, didn't quite know the procedure for what it was going to be, because there was some talk that they were going to keep her here, but that's not the case. While she's in Arizona, the appeal process here could be put on hold, could be placed on hold. By the way, I reached out to her attorneys here today. They had no comment about what's happening there. So it could be put on hold, or they can continue to, move things along. By the way, if you need to switch anything over just to test, we can. I do want to read you. You want to try it?
Yep.
No, it's still black. Maybe we reset this computer.
Okay.
We're gonna try to do this again. My apologies for the tech issues. I want to read you a statement that Brandon Boudreaux said that we could post, and it's he's the victim here in the center of the one case. He said, "Today I'm hopeful for a process that can bring about a small portion of closure to the many people who were affected by the actions of a few. It's taken several years and so much work by many people. In life, things rarely go as planned, and often we are quick to criticize and slow to gratitude. Of course, I wish many things happened differently, but today I choose gratitude towards those who are helping to create accountability, and hope that this process leads to healing and closure." Nice statement there from Brandon. So again, that was his statement. He was married to Melanie Pawlowski, Lori's niece. He was Lori's nephew-in-law. Now let's talk about Chad. By the way, if you're just tuning in, we're doing a kind of a recap about the Lori Vallow on the move from Idaho to Arizona. Feel free to post your questions below, and we'll gather up a few of those, and I'll answer them. Peggy, if those start coming in, feel free to send them over to me. And we're going to talk about Chad right now. So Chad Daybell had a hearing yesterday in Fremont County. A lot of stuff. It was like 4 hours. A lot of stuff being discussed. His trial is April 1st. It's coming up very soon. We'll be doing this every night before we know it, this Courtroom Insider, so I hope you'll tune in then. Chad was dressed in his white shirt, blue tie. He had shackles on his ankles, handcuffs on. To me, he looked like he had aged a bit. He had more gray hair. I haven't seen him in person since I think early last year. I heard something.
I think we're good.
Okay.
Jordan
thinks we're good. Yeah, we're going to play you that footage of Lori being her court appearance and just here in a moment. And then we'll talk a little bit more about Chad. The good news out of yesterday's hearing is that the judge is going to allow cameras. Okay, cross your fingers. We're going to hit play. Lori's first court appearance in Arizona. Here we go.
All right. So Ms. Vallow, you are appearing here on 2 cases. These are both grand jury warrants. What that means is that the grand jury here in Arizona has indicted you on 2 charges. The first case is CR 2022-001242-001. You're being charged in that case with 1 count of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. It is a Class 1 felony committed on October the 2nd of 2019. The second case is CR 2021-001704-001. And in that case, you're also being charged with one count of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. It is also a Class 1 felony. That offense allegedly occurred on July 11th of 2019. Now, I do have to advise you of your right to have an attorney and the right to remain silent. I will appoint counsel for you in both cases. I have a court date coming up for you called the not guilty arraignment hearing. Give me just a second. That hearing is going to take place in the downtown Phoenix Superior Court in our Central Court building. And the date is going to be next Thursday, December 7th at 8:30 in the morning. In both cases, you've been extradited from the state of Arizona. You are currently under the jurisdiction of the Idaho Department of Corrections. That makes you non-bailable at this hearing. So you're not eligible for bail in either case. You do have your court date. You know a lawyer is going to be appointed for you. Do you have any questions?
Are those cases going to be combined, or are they going to be done separately?
Well, they are two separate cases, but they're going to be handled at the same hearing.
Okay.
Okay. So you can talk to your lawyer, but they are two separate cases, which means that you'd have two separate proceedings going forward if it goes to trial.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions, Ms. Vallow?
Just one attorney, or more attorneys will be assigned to me?
Well, at this point in time, you're likely going to have the one lawyer represent you at this particular hearing. What the Maricopa County Public Defender does at this point in time with respect to who they assign for counsel for you, or how many lawyers you have, or anything like that, that will be between you and your lawyer.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions?
So you're saying that will I get to talk to them before that arraignment hearing, or will just at that arraignment hearing they'll be assigned?
Well, typically you do meet your lawyer at that arraignment hearing. Under the circumstances of this case, they may reach out to you before that hearing to have discussions with you. There is also a telephone number that you're going to have on your paperwork that will be able to connect you with the Maricopa County Public Defender's Office.
Okay.
All right.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Ms. Vallow. I appreciate it. All right.
Thank you. First court appearance.
Learn how your body can be fooled into fasting mode, all while
to the point. And her next court appearance is the 7th. Now, a few hours later, the sheriff held a news conference. It was very nice to have the sheriff hold this news conference, and he gave details about the lorry getting booked and the process and all of that. I want to play you some of the news conference because this will answer a lot of your questions. So here we go.
In custody at one of the prisons. We sent 4 deputies, more predictable and more within our control, that if we were going to transport her, that we wouldn't have to deal with any kind of weather conditions or air travel challenges. So our deputies left on the 27th for Idaho, arrived there, stayed for a day to prepare, and brought her back. We sent 2 extradition deputies, a supervisor, and 1 deputy from our K-9 division, but it's just because she's a female deputy. We want to make sure there was a female accompanying suspect Vallow in her travel back. It was about an 18-hour trip. In my statement, as you saw, I talked about the fact that we do about 250 plus extraditions every year. So this is not new for them. The uniqueness or maybe the circumstances involved in this particular case are very high profile and much to the interest of our local and national audience. I don't want to diminish it. It is what we do, as I stated, and we do it very well. Whether it is her or any other fugitive who's wanted in the state of Arizona, we're going to facilitate transfer into our custody so the prosecutor's office can prosecute them effectively. She had her initial appearance at about 2 a.m. when she was remanded without bond. So the case will now be in the hands of the county attorney. While in our custody, at the conclusion of whatever happens with the court case, she will then be returned to Pocatello, to their Department of Corrections. So I want to thank them for their cooperation and facilitation of this also. And I also want to just recognize and express gratitude to our team here, the deputies that spent 4 days on the road to bring her back safely. We do have a really, really good video for you, which I can't show you right now, but we'll get it to you of bringing her into the jail where you get a good look at the process, the initial process of her custody. So I don't, there's not a whole lot more depth to it than that. I just want to make sure you heard from me the status of it, and I'm happy to answer a few questions if they're related to this case.
Sure.
I'll start with
I was going to say, will she be kept in any sort of segregated situation, or is she going to be in just booked regularly in which jail?
Yeah, no, that is a good question. She will be. She's deemed to be high security, so she'll be isolated in a high security area of the Estrada jail.
Tell us what goes into a process such as this. You've dealt with high-profile inmates in the past. That's not new, but obviously this planning has been going on, I would assume, for some time.
It has, and we wanted to make sure that it was, during my tenure as sheriff, I feel like our focus has always been about being really fundamentally sound and less about the bells and whistles. And the men and women who put the planning and preparation took everything into consideration. As I said, we had challenging weather conditions. The last thing we wanted to do was try to fly and get stuck in an airport where suddenly now we're in a space where there's a lot of community members and others, and it takes an extensive period of time. If we're going to travel that road, we need to make sure that we had the appropriate vehicles. As I said, we sent a female deputy to make sure that we had a female deputy accompanying a female inmate. We sent those from our FATE detail, and Extradition's facilitated this because we're the best at managing any kind of transfer of custody or apprehension of those deemed to be dangerous. And make no mistake about it, sometimes I think we look at a person and judge them by appearance, and we go, well, this is a relatively moderate-sized female. What kind of a threat can she be? She is as much, if not more, of a threat to the harm of others as any other dangerous criminal we've had in our custody. So we figure out the entire route, map the challenges, where we're going to stay, how we make sure that our employees get the rest necessary to come back safely. I think it was an 18-hour drive back. Is that correct? About 18 hours? Yeah. So we'll call it planning an extensive road trip that just happens to include bringing back a dangerous fugitive.
Can you clarify this?
Okay, so check this out. Well, you can watch the whole news conference, by the way, on our website. But look at the middle between the curtains. Doesn't this look like a knife? Like the blade? It's not a knife, I promise. But it looks like the way they have these curtains and the TV. I mean, that's just crazy, if you ask me. It's not a knife. I promise it's not a knife. It's just the way that the room was set up. If you want to hear the sheriff, we posted the whole thing. He basically said that 2 vehicles came, 4-wheel drive vehicles came from Arizona. They had originally planned to fly Lori, but because of weather, they didn't. They drove up. They picked her up. 18-hour drive. They stopped along the way for food, for gas. He didn't say if they stayed in a hotel. I don't think they did. They had 4 deputies, at least with the crew, and then a female deputy too. Just so that she could be with Lori, and they drove her. She didn't get an iPad. She didn't get a Kindle. She didn't get an iPhone on the way down. It was just them. And, he also said she was very chatty, very, very talkative. Now that she's in the Maricopa County Jail, many of you have pointed out it's the same facility where Jodi Arias was. She's the woman who killed the man several years ago, stabbed him to death in the shower. It was real bloody and awful, and she actually thinks she had 2 trials. I didn't follow it that close, but Lori is in that same jail. They used to allow cameras in there to do interviews with inmates. I just received word that Lori is not doing any interviews at the moment. They asked her if she talked to me. She said no, but Lori has communicated to me in the past that she will talk one day. So we'll see when that happens. Okay, so that's Lori. Again, we have the video of her getting booked. We have the video of the news conference. You can watch all of that on our YouTube channel. Let me talk about Chad. Chad, 6 motions yesterday. Well, really 5/6. The big one is the cameras. Should cameras be allowed in the courtroom during his trial? John Pryor said yes. His family wants them. He wants a public hearing, public trial. Prosecutor argued against it. East Idaho News, we hired an attorney, led a media coalition to join us. A couple of other agencies did. And we said that you all have the right to watch. Well, Judge Boyce agreed to a point. in the fact that it will be court cameras that will bring you the feed. You can still watch it, which is great, and the sound should be good, but it just won't be media cameras. Now, media cameras generally are much clearer quality. We zoom in, we zoom out. We have a mute button for coughs. I didn't use it. But regardless, it's a good decision, in my opinion, that cameras will be in there for Chad's trial. Another issue brought up. You can watch all that, by the way. You can watch all of yesterday's hearings on there, on our YouTube channel. Another issue was whether to move the trial back to Fremont County. So when the trial was moved from Fremont County to Ada County, Chad's attorney argued that there was a saturation of media coverage, that East Idaho News was everywhere, that everyone was watching us. The prosecutor said they still felt they could get a fair and unbiased jury. The judge said, we got to move it to Ada County. Well, now the prosecutors argued that no, there's just as much media coverage there in Ada County as here, and that East Idaho News is an international platform, a national platform, not just in East Idaho. I think you all are proving that by showing me where you're watching from. If you're watching, I'd love to see, where are you watching from? Just Idaho or all over the place? Prosecutors were saying, listen, it might as well move it back to Eastern Idaho. John Pryor was against that. He said, no way, keep it in Ada County. The judge did not rule on that motion. I'd be surprised if he moved it back. That courthouse in Fremont is tiny. It's old. It's a beautiful courthouse. It's a historic courthouse. Ada County is more secure. I mean, the Fremont County Courthouse is secure, but Ada County, they just went through Lori's, and they have the process down. So I imagine it will stay, but who knows? Judge Boyce could surprise us and move it back here. Another motion that they heard yesterday, well, really it was two motions to take the death penalty off the table. Chad's attorney, John Pryor, argued that his client, Chad, is less culpable than Lori Vallow. That she was more culpable and she didn't get the death penalty, so why should Chad get the death penalty? That was his argument, that he's not as culpable as she is and she didn't get death, so she shouldn't face it. Judge didn't rule on that. Prosecution argued that it should stay on the table. And, you do wonder about Lori Vallow. In one sense, if she wanted to avoid the death penalty, she was smart in a way by not waiving her speedy trial, because otherwise the judge would have likely delayed it and she would have faced death. Because she pushed through, they got death penalty off the table. There was that hearing. That motion, the judge did not rule on the death penalty motion. Another motion the prosecution filed was to clarify and change some of the language in the indictment. A couple of them were clerical errors, months. They asked to remove an S. Some was removing words like and/or, which can change the meaning, and Pryor argued against them, but ultimately the judge said they can change the indictment up until, you remember during Lori's trial, right before everybody rested, the prosecution changed some of the language. And Boyce expressed a little bit of frustration with the prosecutors and said, we've been going at this for months and months, and just now you're changing the indictment. And Jim Archibald opposed it. He said, they can't change the language of it. I mean, what if all of a sudden you redact a whole paragraph or something, which is not happening in this case, by the way. But that was the argument. But the judge said they have the right to change the indictment. They changed the indictment. And then the final motion was about consistency in arguments. John Pryor wanted the judge to force or make sure that the prosecutors are consistent in the arguments they had at Lori's trial during Chad's trial. He said, during Lori's trial, they repeatedly said Lori was the ringmaster. Lori did this. Chad wouldn't do anything without Lori. They can't, according to Pryor, say at Chad's trial, Chad was the ringmaster. Chad was this. That they can't change their arguments. That was Pryor's argument, that they have to be consistent in how they argue this, and they can't flip-flop. Rob Wood stood up and said, we're not going to do that. And he accused Pryor of taking him out of context, some of the phrases. He said, our core theory will be the same on both trials. that Chad and Lori and Alex Cox and maybe other co-conspirators were involved in the murders of 3 people. That's the core theory. They conspired with each other and it happened. The judge said he sees no sign of the prosecutors doing that, changing their theories, changing their arguments, whatever. He said if it did come up during the trial, though, Pryor could raise it. So that motion, didn't really go anywhere, but you know, they're being watched. So it was a long hearing. Like I said, good news that we're going to have cameras in the courtroom, and maybe it'll get moved. I don't know. We'll have to see. Okay, I think that kind of recaps it. If you have questions, I want to answer them as best as I can. Peggy's sending them to me, so I'm going to go through these as well as we can. Was Lori driven or flown to Arizona? She was driven 18 hours. You may have heard that. They were going to fly her. That was the plan with a state plane. It's a lot quicker. It's a lot more secure in many cases to fly. You pick them up, they're there in 2 hours, done. Maggie, do we know if Arizona allows cameras? Yes, they do. I mean, it's up to the judge, but there is a presumption that there will be cameras. It's very rare if there's not. So I mentioned Jodi Arias. Jodi Arias, there was cameras in that trial. And somebody mentioned she did far more than stab the man in the shower. You're right. That's kind of what I remembered, but she's far more in that. So yeah, there should be cameras. We should have them at the hearing on December 7th, and hopefully every hearing going forward. If it goes to a full-blown trial, you can count on us. We'll watch it, and I'll go down there. Kim asks, is Lori facing the death penalty in Arizona? No. Now, as far as I know, she's not. It's a conspiracy charge. In Idaho, it has to be first-degree murder, a capital case, and this is not a capital case down there. They do have death penalty. I would think it would be rare for them to do it, but maybe they will. Maybe they will. I just know that she is. The sheriff made it clear today that when she's finished in Arizona, she'll be back in Idaho. They're not going to keep her. I think the only way they would keep her is if she gets the death penalty, because obviously they then have to carry out an execution. Doreen, what charges is Lori facing in Idaho? What about Arizona? Okay, so her Idaho charges are done. Her case in Idaho is all done. She's appealing, and she was found guilty of the murders of JJ and Tylee, her children, the conspiracy to commit murders of JJ, Tylee, and Tammy Daybell, and grand theft, I believe, by deception. I get hers and Chad's mixed up. So charges done in Idaho, other than the appeal. Arizona, the charges are conspiracy to commit murder. Now, there was some confusion today. The sheriff said first-degree murder, premeditated. We checked with the prosecutor's office. I checked with Justin Lum, who's in Arizona. There may have been, all falls under the same umbrella about the law, but it's conspiracy. The indictment in Arizona is 2 conspiracy charges to commit murder. One on Brandon, one on Charles Vallow. Nate, how did you feel about being called out in court? Thank you, Cheryl, for noticing. Yeah, John Pryor called me out at one point. He said, Mr. Eaton's website, eastidahonews.com. You should all go like it. And then he pointed me out again, saying that, he'd see photos of himself on our website. It was a little awkward. I'll tell you what, there was some attention. Reporters, we try not to be the story, just report the story. I know John Pryor. He's been polite to me, not when the cameras are rolling. He did subpoena me, by the way. Do you remember that? He gave me a subpoena. Luckily, we got that quashed. But it was weird, honestly, being called out in court. But weirder things have happened. Steve, can she have the same attorney in Arizona as here? No. Unless that attorney is licensed in both states. And her attorneys here are not licensed in Arizona. She'll have a public defender in Arizona. They will represent her there. Jim and John Thomas and Jim Archibald are done with the case here. And but she has another attorney who is her appellate attorney here in Idaho. Jana Lee, when the trial is over and it's all said and done, where will Lori be housed forever? Good question. Idaho. From what the sheriff said today, from what I have heard, She is still a Department of Correction Idaho inmate. She's just on loan to Arizona, you could say. So she's still under the umbrella, but she's not in their custody. And when Arizona wraps up, if she gets a life sentence there in Arizona, they'll be served consecutively at the same time, or concurrently. Consecutively is one after the other. Concurrently, they'll be served at the same time. They'll then move her back to Idaho, where she will serve that time. Can the judge ever revoke commissary privileges? Bert says. Good question, Bert. I don't know if a judge necessarily would, but the prison could. I think if there's an inmate who behaves badly, yeah, you could lose that. You could lose that privilege. You could lose other privileges, going out to eat, not out to eat, but going out to like the cafeteria with all the other inmates. You could lose that. There are definitely punishments. Everything I've heard, Lori was a model inmate in Pocatello. Didn't cause any problems. Polite, friendly, charming. You know, not a fighter from everything I've heard. Is Chad still a member of the LDS Church? Suzanne asks. No, he's not. He was excommunicated, or he lost his membership several months ago, maybe even a year ago. More than a year ago, actually. I've seen the letter from the church saying he's no longer a member. Nate, you sound like I'm getting sick. Rest and take care. Angel, you're so kind. I'm not getting sick as far as I know. Knock on every piece of wood. Everyone in my family's been sick. Half our staff has been sick. I can't get sick because we're doing Secret Santa deliveries all month long. And like we did 6 today in the midst of all this Lori Vallow stuff. We were in Sugar City. We were all over. And it's amazing. So I just can't get sick. So I think it's just because I've been talking a lot today. My voice goes hoarse after a while. Pam, are you going to go to Arizona and cover this trial? Pam, I'm there. I'm there. I won't be at every hearing. It can be expensive, especially if there's cameras. But when the trial gets going, absolutely. Who are the conspiracy charges for? I think you mean the victims were Charles Vallow, her 4th husband, and Brandon Boudreaux, her nephew-in-law, former nephew-in-law. Are Chad and Lori in communication? Everybody I've talked to says no, but the prosecution asked the judge, Boyce, to clarify if he had a no-contact order between them, and he came out and said he did not. Now, during the trials, they weren't allowed to communicate, but once Lori was found guilty and sent to prison, I think that Chad technically could have contacted her, but as far as I know, they're not in contact with each other. Are Chad and Lori divorcing? No, they are not. As far as I know, they're not. I think Lori is still strongly devoted to Chad. I don't know what Chad thinks about her, and a lot will come out during the trial. But all I've heard, everything I've heard is no. Lori is still devoted to Chad. Carol, will this be televised? I think you mean the trial. Yes, in Arizona, it should be. It should be televised. What Lori Vallow, Daybell decides to do as far as pleading guilty or taking a plea agreement or something, she could just be done with it. I've heard from many people she did not want to go to Arizona. She likes the Pocatello facility. By the way, it is a beautiful view up there. The Pocatello Women's Facility is on a hill, like on a mountain. You go up this hill, and I had never been there until a few weeks ago, and it is a beautiful view when you're not looking at cinder walls. But if you have a window or you're outside, it's a beautiful place. The warden is very polite, and it's not a bad facility from what I've heard. I know several of you who watch have been inmates there and have sent me messages about it. And if you have been, I'd love to hear your experience. But it's not a bad place, I guess you could say. She didn't want to go to Arizona. She might want to try her hardest to get back here. She might say, you know what? I'm done. Guilty. Send me back. I don't know. We'll see. She's hard to predict. All right. Well, thank you very much. I think that's all the questions we have. Thank you, Peggy, for your help. Thank you all for watching. Again, spur of the moment, last minute Courtroom Insider. Good to be back. We'll be there in Boise when the trial starts for Chad in April and whenever Lori's trial starts. If you have any questions, you can post below. I will ask you to follow me There's my Facebook. There's my X. Need to change that little birdie to an X. There's my Instagram. And there is our YouTube channel. If you want to see any and all of the videos that I've referenced, feel free to do that when we're done. All right. I hope you all have a good night. Take care. Thanks again for watching. We will see you later.